It is our pleasure to welcome Professor Sireci, a distinguished university professor and executive director of the Center for Educational Assessment at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. So you will join us, Professor, in Rome as one of the keynote speakers and at the AEA Europe 2026 conference in November. So your keynote asked the question, has validity really changed? So what is behind that question, and why is this the right moment to revisit it?
A lot of people are talking about how much validity has changed or how much it needs to change, particularly with respect to artificial intelligence and other technologies. And as I participate in these conversations, I realize, the fundamental aspects of validity, I don't really think they change. There probably are some changes in practices and maybe some other things we need to do that we can talk about. But the idea that tests are used for specific purposes, and we have to justify the use of those tests for those purposes, right? That because tests are technologies, they're products that have consequences for individuals, have consequences for organizations and society. So how do we defend, the use of a test for a particular purpose? So I think that's what doesn't change. We've got to have evidence that the test is measuring what we think it's measuring, and that's traditionally been what a lot of people focus on. But also that the test scores are being used appropriately and that they're fulfilling their intended purposes. So I think the fundamental idea that tests are developed for specific purposes, and we have to have evidence, validity evidence, that the test is fulfilling the purposes in a way that's doing more good and not causing harm, that's going to endure.
Yeah. And so today, when we look at so many changes happening in the world, how we measure, what are we actually measuring, what are the technologies involved, AI and other technologies that are now changing how we find these assessments, how we use them. So that question of validity really comes into play. And so that's what you talk about. And so which principles remain non-negotiable and what changes? Or how does the context of whatever's changing in the world today affect that?
Yeah, you're right. AI and other technologies are really influencing how we go about test development. Even how some people are defining the content domain. We've got some organizations are taking test books and throwing them into AI and they create test specifications. So it has the potential to automate a lot of the test development processes, and we know AI is used in scoring and so forth. I think the way we're using AI at University of Massachusetts is more as a tool to help us do what we've always been doing rather than replacing what we've been doing by AI. So it's more AI in the loop than human in the loop. But how does that relate to validity? Well, if you're using AI to help define the construct measured, if you're using AI to develop test content, people are suspicious and are worried about AI because they don't understand what's happening inside the black box, how it's actually working. So I think the more we use AI in testing, the more we have to validate and confirm that what it's doing is consistent with valid measurement, is consistent with our notions of the construct and so forth. So I think the use of AI in assessment provides a huge opportunity for psychometricians because we're already trained to work on and analyze unobservable variables. We're trying to unpack the black box of what's happening in assessment in general. So the tools that we use to validate and evaluate assessments, I think, can be applied to the black box nature of AI. So the additional requirements for not so much the requirements for validity, but the additional validity work now has to be, okay, can we validate that your use of AI in construct definition, in item development, is contributing to valid measurement rather than contributing to a narrower view, a narrower conceptualization of the construct. For example, if AI is just drawing material from a very dominant worldview, a very dominant view, with this acronym WEIRD, Western Educated Industrialized whatever nations, then that's going to be a problem, right? So if AI is limited in what it's drawing from, then we might be narrowing the construct, and we have to really be wary about that. If AI is scoring things in a way that's a narrow representation of the types of responses that should get higher scores, then that's something we have to worry about too. So I think the additional requirement with the use of AI is that we have more to validate, which is actually good news for psychometricians in that we'll be able to take our validation skills and apply them to a wider skill set. So when computer scientists and others create assessments without a lot of theory in the background, they're going to require us to check that, all right, here's the purpose that you're applying this assessment for, and here are the aspects that are working, here are the aspects that are not. So it's just a way of thinking about the fundamental properties of validity, I think, remain, but they're going to need to be applied to a wider set of circumstances.